The red carpet is out and the stage is set for Joe Biden's first trip to the Middle East as President of the United States. His predecessor made an astronomical impact on the region, pulling out of the Iranian nuclear deal and brokering peace deals between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain. These two issues are likely to be high on Biden's agenda, as he is trying to rejoin the JCPOA against the will of the Israeli hosts. Furthermore, after meeting with Israeli and Palestinian officials, Biden is travelling from Israel directly to Saudi Arabia, a country that new Israeli Premier Yair Lapid has asked to reach out to Israel to normalise ties. So will Biden be able to make an impact on his trip to the Middle East, or is this nothing more than a formality and a nice photo op? Will the new Israeli and American governments have the same relationship as Trump and Netanyahu did, or is the supposed common goal a bit too different for the two of them? What is Biden's primary objective in the Middle East?
So let's get to it. What is Biden's primary objective here in the Middle East? As always, we will start by a round of 30 seconds each, and we pick up the conversation right after. Camelia, please take the lead.
Sure. I'm thinking to support Israeli partners that still has a very strong support for the United States when it comes to Iran reviving the deal. And also in Saudi Arabia, selling more weapons to help and boost the lucrative trade of the weapons manufacturers in the United States.
Definitely a whole lot on the agenda. Yariv, your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely Iran is number one priority. And also America lost contact for the last few years with its partners. And we saw here meetings of Israelis, Gulf states, Egypt, Jordan, without America at all. So it will be maybe an opportunity to restart engagement of America, of United States, with the other countries in the region that counter the Iranian threat. And also, let's be honest, also supporting the Israeli current government. What was the government? This is also a goal. They will not speak out about it, but it is.
Well, we'll get to that in a split second. Last but definitely not least, David, your thoughts?
So as Barack Obama once said, don't underestimate Joe Biden's ability to screw things up.
Oh.
This is all a ruse. This is all a ruse because of the domestic issues and the problems that he had trying to get the deal with Iran back. Iran is basically putting him to the fire. So he's coming here, one, in order to get Saudi Arabia to send more oil, to pump more oil, and number two, to kind of try to put pressure on Iran. It's just a really bad game of checkers on his part.
Well, dear panelists, please feel free to interact from this point onwards. And all of you mentioned Iran obviously topping the agenda. And if we're talking timing here, Tehran reportedly willing to support on the ground Russia in its war on Ukraine. How is this blatant stance Iran is taking now with the anti-Western camp going to impact the agenda of this visit, Camelia?
I believe that it helping Iran is still to play a game and stretch the time negotiating with the Western countries. Most of the Western allies are engaged and very busy with the United States confronting Russia, and that gives Iran more time to, first of all, continue its nuclear program, and the second, can use that as a leverage for the tools to negotiate better with the Western countries. Iran and Russia are allies over the Ukrainian issues, but they have certain differences which is counter their interest in Central Asia. And I believe that Ukrainian war so much help the Islamic Republic at this stage to benefit from these gaps and differences open between Russia and the U.S. particularly.
And one of the ways, if you will, to counter Iran is by reinforcing or solidifying the alliances in the Middle East. One of the attempts is to set up this defense architectures, this defense alliance between Israel and Gulf countries. What are the prospects of it actually materializing? And if indeed happens, we can't really underestimate the significance for the region altogether, right, David?
Yeah, so I mean that's 100%. I mean that would be fantastic for Israel. It would be good for America. The biggest issue we have right now is the fact that there is no real legitimate government in Israel. The Prime Minister Bennett, he dropped down, and I have a feeling that he actually did it for good reasons. He knows what this Jerusalem declaration, he probably knew ahead of time what it was going to be, and I have a feeling it's something that Bennett actually disagrees with, that Lapid doesn't. And this causes huge problem for Israel. It's a very bad thing if all of a sudden they come and try to split up Jerusalem after Trump did such a great deed for the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
I doubt it if Bennett thought about the Jerusalem speech, because before he lost his coalition, if it was up to Bennett, he was the prime minister not only today but also in the next few weeks, months, and years. So it's not really the case. But I do think that Iran is a threat, but also an opportunity. And we saw this opportunity with the connection that Israel has with the Gulf states, the Emirates, Bahrain, and others. And for sure, Saudi Arabia, Israel, this is one of the things that in Israel, we are all, right and left, expecting to see a better relationship and more connection that they are open and visible between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think it's a consensus, and there is a legitimate government in Israel that will be happy to promote it. Having said that, we do have the issue of the Palestinians, and Biden is not Trump. He believed, like any other former president except of Trump, that East Jerusalem, for example, should be the capital of Palestine. And therefore,
that is why Bennett stepped down.
To see.
And to Bennett's credit, is if he knows what's in the Jerusalem Declaration, which is supposed to be signed tomorrow by Lapid and the president, if he knows what's in there, and this is in something along the lines of what you're talking about, which is just basically calling for the destruction of Israel, if that's in there, I'm sure Bennett has that red line. 100% it is.
This is totally fake news. It's not a destruction
Jerusalem
of Israel.
Is the eternal capital of the Jewish people and Israel forever. There's no questions about it. That's the position of the Republican Party, and that was the position of the Democratic Party until Obama came into power.
I need to remind you that even presidents from the Republican Party support a deal of two states with Jerusalem as capital of both Israel and Palestine. That is
no longer true. You will not find anybody running for president on the side of the Republican Party that believes what you said.
And more than that, even Israel itself, we never allowed the people of East Jerusalem that are Palestinian to be Israeli citizens. This is something significant.
Wait, don't twist things. They may not be Israeli citizens, but just as you know and I know, anybody in East Jerusalem does have the right to vote in Jerusalem elections in the city of Jerusalem.
That's not
so
true.
They might not have they might not have full citizenship, but they do have the ability to vote.
To the truth. First of all, they have the right to vote for the municipality. They don't have the right to be elected, and of course they don't have the right to vote for the country.
That's what I
tell
said.
You one thing.
Yeah.
People that are saying that Jerusalem will be only under Israel's sovereignty and there will not be a Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem, they don't want to see peace agreement between us and the Palestinians.
Yes.
They don't want to see the two-state
That is
solution.
not true.
Because there will not be
the only peace agreements that have ever
without joint capital in Jerusalem. This is a fact.
Yes, well, gentlemen, we'll get more to the issue of Israel, Palestinians, how central is it going to be, if at all, during the visit. But before we do that, let's stay with Saudi Arabia for a second. Camelia, with all due respect to Israel, this visit is to an extent... Sure. Israel is just a stop on his way to Saudi Arabia. And my question to you is very simple. What price is the U.S. willing to pay to make Saudi Arabia increase oil production?
If Saudi Arabia wants to increase the oil production, there are certain things has to be made by President Biden. One of them is assuring them about the Iran deal, with serving the interests of the regional allies. Iran would stop arming terrorist groups in the region, stop interfering regional affairs, and at the same time respect the sovereignty of the neighboring countries. For example, we have the missile attacks in Iraq, and also the Houthis violating the truce in the past few months since they have the peace, the ceasefire with Saudi Arabia. All of this comes to concern. But speaking about the alliance which between the Israelis and the Arab countries of the Persian Gulf, which was your first question, it went to the Israeli-Palestinian issues, that might be at the part of the discussion of President Biden, but still I'm not seeing that the interest or the readiness in the region for such a conversation. For example, we could say not all of the countries in the region have relation with Israel. And also, for example, Qatar has a good relation with Israel, and at the same time with Iran cannot join such alliances. And Iraq also has a good relation with the States, and at the same time very good relation with Iran. And for Saudi Arabia, it still is too early to discuss if the relation between Israel and Saudi Arabia can be normalized. There are several facts. One of them, the gentleman just discussed about the capital of the two states, like Palestine and Israeli, would be formed. So Quds, according to the late Malik Abdullah, should be capital of the Palestinian, and also the refugees who should be able to go back. And also Israel has to respect 1967 borders. So this is what frequently Saudi Arabia
relating to the Arab Peace Initiative. Yes, Camelia, before we have to wrap up this part of the debate, does the mere existence of this visit means the Khashoggi murder is forgiven and forgotten from the U.S. standpoint?
That was a very, very different topic. We saw, first of all, Turkey and Saudi Arabia normalize their relation. If we said that Turkey was the country rise and makes the stories as a huge deal, it put that over. So for the United States, oil is very important, as you said. And when it comes to certain issue like the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, like what you were investigating of the attempt has been killed these Palestinian American journalists. In Israel, the same things. Khashoggi wasn't an American citizen. He was just a green card holder. And his investigation didn't lead to say really the ruler of Saudi Arabia were involved. And I believe it was just an excuse for the Democrat Party to blame President Trump and to push his agenda, making the peace with the regional countries and Israel in the spotlight. Otherwise, I guess it's too much over.
We're taking a very short break, but buckle up, dear panelists and dear viewers, because as you can see, the debate is getting heated as we dive into the Israel-Palestinian question. Back in a bit, don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the summit. Still with us, Camelia Entekhabifard, Yariv Oppenheimer, and David Winner. Thank you all very much for staying with us. And as we've been discussing before the break, and we'll definitely continue now, Jerusalem is on high gear ahead of this high-profile visit. But what do Jerusalemites themselves think from west to east? Our P.S. Steckelbach went out to the streets. Let's take a listen.
We were waiting and waiting for presidents of the US to come and to change something. I experienced maybe 3 or 4 presidents. No one did anything for Palestine. Everything becomes worse. There is nothing new worth mentioning. One moved the US embassy to Jerusalem. Now what does Biden want to do? Bring the embassy back to Tel Aviv? No.
He will, of course, speak about the economy. They have economic interests in the region. The Israelis have national interests. Arab states have economic interests. We, the Palestinian people, do not really have an economy. But Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, they have the power.
Biden himself, if the American people would choose a different president, maybe. But he is nothing to the Middle East. He comes for the fuel. He does not come for talks with the Palestinians and Israelis. Now, Palestinians will maybe benefit from one thing, financial aid, as always, but peace, nothing.
So let's get to it. Is Biden even thinking about the two-state solution? Let's kickstart this round with another 30-second each and engage in a conversation right after. Camelia, take the lead.
Sure, I believe no, not speaking about Palestinian-Israeli conflict at this trip at all. Oil is very important for him if he can convince Saudi.
Oh, we're having technical issues to hear Camelia. Well, hopefully we will fix it in a second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes. Okay, sure. Just the oil is important for President Biden. If it can be meant a good relation with Saudi and Saudi's signal to the other Persian Gulf allies to increase the production levels, this is what he's looking for to boost his popularity during the midterm election in November. No Palestinian Israelis would be discussed or has his interest to serve at this trip.
Yes, just not serving him politically, Yariv?
I do think that when Biden is coming here, there is expectation in the Democratic Party that policy will change, and then we will not see exactly the same policy of Trump that try eventually to kill the idea of the two-state solution as we know it, and to invent another two-state solution that is totally irrelevant. So Biden didn't open the consulate. We opened the consulate in East Jerusalem, but he is going to visit East Jerusalem without Israeli representative. And this will be a message saying, yeah, I'm support the two-state solution. I have no illusion that it's going to happen with this government tomorrow, but this is the vision and this is what we support.
No illusions, David?
Well, I think Biden, his whole time, he's been trying to basically take down everything that Trump did. Trump handed him a silver platter. He handed him U.S. production of oil. They were a net plus production of oil. Now they're net negative, and they have to run and beg Saudi Arabia. And let me remind you, Saudi Arabia refused to take Biden's phone call back in March when he needed oil. And now he really is desperate for the oil, and he'll do anything he can. The Palestinians, I feel bad for them because everybody keeps playing these games. Israel left plays with them, the U.S. plays with them, and the Arabs play with them.
So speaking of which, and please feel free to engage in a conversation, the Shireen Abu Akleh affair, the killing of the American Palestinian journalist, the American investigation concluding inconclusive results. We cannot attribute this incident to Israel, and the Palestinians are fuming, most notably Abu Akleh's family, demanding to meet President Biden. But is it really overshadowing the visit or being pushed sideways?
It's great that they're fuming.
Although this issue is a tragic one, and I think that America is trying to do everything to get rid of this hot potato and to continue forward, and the interest of the Palestinian Authority with America and with Israel are so big. So I believe that also the President Abbas will raise the issue, but this will not be the number one issue. And this will show us again the gap between the politicians and the people, because the Palestinian people do think that this is the number one issue that should be part of the agenda. I guess that Biden maybe will say a few words, but he will try to move on and to try to ignore it.
David, will it be enough?
Like I said before. So even their own government, the own Palestinians' government, are using them. I mean, this bullet, it's a bullet. It doesn't get damaged. And there was an expert that looked at the bullet, and he specifically said a hammer was taken to it. Why? Because they know where it came from. It didn't come from the Israeli side. They know it came from them. So they damaged the bullet. You can go look in the Times of Israel. You can go look online, and you can see there's experts that have reviewed it. There's experts that reviewed it.
Israeli IDF spokesperson not saying what you are just saying. This is really a fake news. But be serious.
It's fake news. Who damaged the bullet? How did the bullet get so damaged that they can't even test it?
The bottom line is, gentlemen, that the American inquiry was inconclusive, and there's no.
But they said that there is most of the chances it was Israeli army.
They said that the Israelis were standing in a position where they would hit the person because the Palestinians were using her as a shield. No, it's the same old story. The Palestinians do everything they can in order to twist things, and they use their own people for their own benefits. That's why you have a palace of Abbas
eventually, you so
Ramallah.
Care for the Palestinians. I heard you carefully. You so care for the Palestinians. So maybe you can say here that you are against occupation. Because without occupation, no Israeli soldiers will
There is no occupation. Well, there's no occupation. Look, there is no occupation. You know what was beautiful? You know what was beautiful? You know what was beautiful? Last time I was on this show, they asked me about the Rwanda law. right? So the Israeli left came up with this great idea to get rid of the Philippines from this country, to pay them $5,000 to leave the country. It sounds very similar to the racist Rav Kahana that he wanted to do with the Palestinians, to pay them to leave. There's no occupation here. Everybody knows there's no occupation. So this is a dream of the left.
This is your solution, to pay people to leave.
I didn't say this was the left solution. This was this current government solution, not my solution. I just called it a racist solution. This was the left solution to get rid of the Philippines, the Filipinos from here.
When you control over a land, you have responsibility to the people living there. And if you are a democratic state,
we don't control the land. We don't control the land.
If you not control
there's
the
billions
land,
of people around the world agree fully that this land is controlled by God, and He chooses who it belongs to. It belongs to the Jewish people.
The main question is whether President Joe Biden is going to even address those hot button topics you've mentioned, and I suspect the answer might be no. But before we wrap up, Camelia, as we've mentioned, approval ratings of Joe Biden back home deteriorating by the second, really. Can anything that happens here help him back home?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to express my opinion about the Palestinian-American journalist case in the West Bank. It wouldn't overshadow the talks. I understand as an American-Iranian journalist, as you understand that, such a topic is not a huge, major breaking news for President's visit. When this is his first time visiting the region. Of course, it comes to his consideration, but he has more things to do with Israel and Saudi Arabia, and particularly Iran, to address. And for President Biden, no. Even we knew that among of the Democrat Party, he is not popular anymore. Not him, even not the Vice President, Kamala Harris. No one wants nor him, neither the Vice President run for the next election. Maybe he can just put little bit midterm election during this visit, only if he can make two things happen here. First, to decrease the price of the gasoline in the United States, and second, assure regional alliance over Iran reviving the deal. I believe that this deal would be happen. Iran is going back to the negotiation tables and will sign a deal because the country desperately needs cash to boost in the society, and for Biden too, he needs this deal first of all to make his promises completed. As he said, he's going back to the deal, and also to stop Iran becoming nuclear